Hello, my dear students. My name is Himal Handu, and I am back with you again for Class 11 English Core from the NCERT textbook Snapshots. This is Part 3 of Chapter 6, The Ghat of the Only World by Amitav Ghosh. Let's recapitulate what we did in the last session, that is part 2. We went totally into detail of the story, the two main characters being the author himself, Amitav Ghosh, and Agha Shahid Ali, about whom he has written the story. Dear students, there are some things that you need to keep in mind when you read this story. The lesson is all about a friend's tribute to another friend. There, Amitav Ghosh recalls all the memories of his beloved friend Shahid in order to fulfill his promise that he would write about him after his death. This is a profoundly emotional response to respect a friend's desire to write something about him after his death. Some points that we should remember are obviously the meeting of Shahid and the author Amitav Ghosh, the blooming of their friendship, Shahid's request to the author to write about him after his death, which I should mention from the text. Turn to page number 55 of the text, wherein he says, "Clear though it was that his imperative would have to be acknowledged, I could think of nothing to say. What are the words in which one promises a friend that one will write about him after his death?" Now, this is a dilemma for Amitav as well, when Shahid asks him to write about him. Let us also remember Shahid as a great poet and a music lover. He was a profound lover of good poetry and music. And these are some points that you would need to mention whenever you're mentioning anything about the story. Another point you would have to keep in mind is Shahid's love for his homeland. The love of Shahid for Kashmir is shown in most of his works, even when he used to write about them. So this is a very important point that we'll have to keep in mind. To quote his own words, "I want to return to Kashmir to die." His words reveal the warmth of the political system that they had during those days in Kashmir. During his short period of their friendship with Amitabh, Shahid left a very different Kashmir with some fabulous brushstrokes as well. We also need to remember Shahid as a very secular person. A very secular person, a firm believer in the separation of politics and religious practice. So, he was so secular that at a point when his childhood, he wanted a room in his own house in Srinagar where he wanted to build a little Hindu sanctuary inside his room. And his mother helped him to do that. Then we have to remember Shahid's love for food and festivity. Shahid was always loving food, especially the local cuisine of Kashmir. His favorite dish was Rogan Josh. His ability in the kitchen was unbelievable. He would spend days planning and arranging a supper party. So, even in his last phase of illness, he could appreciate food and talk about food. He went to it without disappointment whenever there was a meeting or a gathering. And food definitely was there in every party of his. We also need to remember about Shahid and his terrible disease. Though he was a very valiant and powerful person, but the terrible illness, like cancer, could not break his mind. Shahid was a fighter, and in the face of misfortune, he never lost courage. Even while at the hospital, he refused to take help from a wheelchair and preferred to walk on his own feet. To him, cancer was like a joke. He admitted, but never admitted, his cancer defeat. Almost to the very end, even though his life was consumed by this terrible illness, he was the center of a perpetual carnival, a celebration of life, an endless meal of talk, laughter, food, and of course, poetry. There is a great learning that we have to take from Shahid. He celebrated the life that everyone thought he was defeated by every day. He fought with the disease, but he was never depressed. His death does not create a paradox. He suffered from cancer in the beginning, almost for 14 months. But his zest for living is something we need to learn from him. Now we should also remember to mention Shahid and Amitav Ghosh as friends. As I said in the text itself, the friendship of these two persons resulted, though it was brief, it resulted in so vast a void. One more point that you all need to remember in the story is Shahid and the hospital scene. So you will have to remember the wheelchair incident, and you will have to remember the way he critically speaks, an interesting analysis of his own poetry, and the diasporic poet, as is called, the diasporic poet. You will have to pay attention to those points as well. And do not forget, Shahid was an extraordinary teacher. Do remember the late entry of a student into his class, the incident. For this, you will definitely have to go back to the text and read in detail. So I can just tell you that when an Indian student arrived late into the class, he greeted her with a very loud voice. "Oh, my little subcontinental is here." So he had a great sense of humor as well. So do read these lines as well in the text. So Shahid had a wonderful repartee. It means the person who is quick and has an amusing way of conversation with his witty answers and remarks. So the other incident that you need to remember is the incident at the airport in Barcelona, a woman security guard who stopped Shahid for a security check. I have already explained this in detail in part 2. Dear students, we hope we have covered the whole thing in detail, and you will be better prepared with these points to appear for any questions that are about this chapter. And lastly, do not forget the title itself, which is of great significance. You should be able to justify the title, The Ghat of the Only World. Thank you so much. That's all we have for today. Have a wonderful day.